Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR Podcast, brought to you by RaceForThePrize.com. It's 2026. We are all back again, but it's not the same old, same old. We have made a major transition at RaceForThePrize.com from the spreadsheets that I sold to now web tools, faster, quicker. You can access them from pretty much any device. Get the data instantaneously. You do not have to wait for someone to upload the data into a spreadsheet. So let's play around with Bowman-Gray. It's coming up. Look at some of the data and just fool around with the tools. A couple videos that I'm going to pop out, throw at you, where we'll just talk Bowman-Gray, the Madhouse, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, my old Ballawick. Went to a race there once upon a time, Memorial Day weekend, watched some modified, some late models. It was fun, exciting, there were fights, there's always fights. They got really good fresh, and I think I've mentioned this before, fresh fried pork rinds. Got to get them if you're in Winston-Salem, at the Dash. At Bowman-Gray, home of Winston-Salem State. Get yourself some of those pork rinds. It's also a dry facility. Now there is one corner in the racetrack / football field where you can partake in libations. Anyway, that's a story for another day. Let's goof around with Bowman-Gray and let's just look at the tools. So the first thing we've got loaded up, just your obvious table, very much like a spreadsheet. We can see in the yellow the drivers that were optimal. We can see start, finish, average running position, all the necessary data that you like to get your hands on. Blah, blah, blah. Nothing special there. Sorted up. But, you know, it's nice to have. This is all free, by the way, if you're following me on Twitter. There's a link to it. Although it's not fancy schmancy, it's useful. You want to look at the optimal lineup. You want to look at what drivers were scoring. Where were they running? Where did they start? Where did they finish? Who'd scored the most place differential points? These are necessary data points that you're going to have to go over when you make your 2026 Bowman-Gray picks. I know that we only have a small sample size of one, but Bowman-Gray is a short track. And if you go back and watch the race, which you don't need to do, because there are so many tools here that will catch you up, but if you do, it's not like the LA Coliseum. That thing didn't work. Big surprise. Big surprise. They just made up probably the worst track ever. It didn't work. Fine. It was awesome. TV ratings, blah, blah, blah. But Bowman-Gray has been around for quite a while. And although the drivers are not very familiar with it, they're very familiar with late model racing, short track racing, flat track racing. It was, for the most part, very similar to Martinsville. Watch the race again. If you don't have time to watch the race again, here are the free tools that will pretty much clue you in and fill you in. Passing is possible. Drivers can make moves. And specific drivers did excel at this racetrack. We all know that the Gen 7 car, very similar. There's not a lot of difference. Everybody's pretty much got the same thing. It's as stock can get. And throughout the year, teams learn more and they make more advancements. And we'll see a JGR or a Hendrick have their moment where they are excelling at an intermediate track or at specific short tracks. But in the end, when it's all said and done, a lot of times with the Gen 7 car, it really is simply more up to driver skill. And I know people don't want to admit that because it looks like there's a lot of parity, but especially at the short tracks, short flat tracks, it is a requirement to be able to constantly throttle up at the right time, hit the braking zones correctly, take care of your stuff, take care of your brake pressure, take care of your tires. All those things are necessary where there is a skill factor that definitely does separate drivers. Whereas we can't necessarily look at the setups and the equipment from practice, but in a race, 400, 500 miles, driver skill matters. Knowing what they're doing, maintaining their equipment, it really does. But on top of that, we also have to factor in the starting position also matters because it is still difficult to pass. And so you may have a driver that starts up front that may not be the best at maintaining their stuff, but still, due to track position, they are able to hold on. There's a lot of variables. We all know this. But there was passing, obviously, with Ryan Blaney, who had mechanical issues in practice, started the back, 21 place differential points, and we'll use the tools to show his ascendance, if we want to say. Ross Chastain also gains positions. Austin Cindric also gains positions. We see a little bit of a pattern here. Joey Logano is running up front. Josh Berry in the quasi-Penske car running up front. So obviously Penske good at the short flat track. Penske typically good at Martinsville. A bit of a pattern there. We also see a small pattern in drivers that are road course experts. Although Ross Chastain's not a road course expert. Actually, he's a pretty good road course driver. And Trackhouse has pretty good equipment. Braking, throttling. Chase Elliott wins this race. Road course expert, Martinsville, Hendrick, short flat track, basically checks all the boxes. Look, Shane Van Gisbergen, running in the top 10 all night. And we've said this for years with AJ Allmendinger, and although I think sometimes we overplayed a little bit, that the short flat tracks, braking zones, throttling up right after releasing from brake pressure, over and over and over and over, does favor some of the road course drivers. Maybe we overplay that at times, but there is something there. And you can see it with this data, and that's something to look into in 2026. And so you have an idea or a concept, and then you take the data and you verify it. And you see if there's something to lean into. Obviously, Todd Gillen, strong at Martinsville in the truck series. And when we look at a truck, we like to compare the trucks to the Gen 7 car more so than the Xfinity ride because the truck's underpowered. Doesn't quite have the power that the Xfinity ride has. And so if you can run around Martinsville really well in the truck series, which Todd Gillen could do and ran really well, got that famous win and then told Kyle Busch to F off and then was subsequently fired from KBM. It's fine, KBM was falling apart at that time anyway. But Gilly could run Martinsville, and so Gilly has actually been pretty good at Martinsville in the Cup Series, and then to see him put together a decent result, and he got a little bit of some tangles during this race, but either way, he was able to move forward, he survived the race. I know 14th place isn't anything to write home about, but remember, it's a small field, it's a clash, you want positive momentum, he didn't go backwards. He didn't go backwards. All right, that's just your typical data right there. You know, Denny Hamlin, guy grew up on short flat tracks in Virginia. Of course, he's going to know what he's doing. Chase Elliott, again, we checked all the boxes. Gilly, Cindric, Blaney. I gave you an explanation on Chastain. Bubba was pretty aggressive. And the Toyotas across the board were pretty strong. Tyler Reddick was up there all night. Again, you don't have to watch the race again because all the data will do it for you. Let's look at a couple more tools for this video as we close out. All right, yeah, this is the last thing we'll look at here. And this is the line graph, lap by lap analysis. And you can see Ross Chastain. You can change this data to give you speeds and times and whatever. And zoom in, zoom out, and do all the magical stuff to really get a great analysis. But the one thing I want to point out here is, so Ross Chastain, aggressive driver, which is necessary at the madhouse. You've got to move people. And sometimes you got to know when you think you can make a move on the outside. It's pretty racy. Surprisingly, a pretty racy race. But the race favors, again, people who are really good late model short track racers or just short track racers, grew up in the grassroots. Favors those road course drivers, also favors aggressive drivers. Ross Chastain definitely among the aggressive. A driver that I want to throw in here who kind of also illustrates one of the situations that we have. So we can see that Chastain makes his way to the front and ends up with a good finish. You can pass, you can make moves, you can be aggressive. But Ross Chastain also, it works out for Chastain, but Carson Hocevar also illustrates another situation that you're going to run into, the random volatility that is a exhibition race, that is fantasy NASCAR. Why you like it, why you love it, why you loathe it. Carson Hocevar, aggressive, so he checks that box. Flat track, short track, late models. He also runs in those races Didn't he win at Winchester a year or so ago? He's won several of those Wisconsin short track late model races. Now, I think Winchester's actually high banked, but he's running all over the place. Definitely used to short track late model racing. Now, banking is another issue we'll get into. But either way, aggressive driver, we all know that. And you can see that he is able to make moves forward by being aggressive. The problem is that about right here, like lap 108, I believe it is, and you can watch the race over, or you can just look at this, and what happens during this moment, like, oh, well, what exactly happened? Well, again, you can go to the notes and find out exactly what happens, and may actually even be able to watch the video if it's on here. I suppose it probably is, but we're cutting this thing short. Either way, Hocevar's pretty aggressive, moves his way forward, but he pushes it a little bit too much right here, and Christopher Bell just basically dumps him. Turns him into the wall. Good night. He does recover a little bit, but basically he, kicked the hornet's nest, and Christopher Bell said, "Who do you think you are?" And we've seen this happen to Ross Chastain, and we see it happen to Carson Hocevar. And Hocevar, his mentor is Chastain. Chastain's never really learned the lesson. People don't like him. Hocevar's following in his footsteps as the next villain. And the problem is, oh wow, he's black hat. Well, the thing with Earnhardt having the black hat and being the bad guy, he was the intimidator, and people didn't really fight back. They just could not stand up to him. Whereas Ross Chastain, people will fight back. People will turn dump and race Ross the way he races them ×2. And Carson Hocevar has even less seniority, even less cachet. And so when Hocevar does his best Chastain impression, we'll just laugh and say, yeah, we're just going to wreck you. Or we'll just let you wreck yourself. And that is pretty much what happens. Ultimate DFS GPP play. Does he have talent? Yes. Is he aggressive in what we want in DFS? Yes. Is he going to blow up lineups and should have no access whatsoever, be anywhere near your cash lineups? Absolutely. And will we see this again at Bowman-Gray? Yeah. I think all the same patterns are going to play out. And so to familiarize yourself with those patterns, you're going to want to look at the data. That'll do it for this video. Tons of more tools to look at racefortheprize.com. Highline Betting is jumping on. Follow him on Twitter. We're going to pull in all of his betting stuff. Tons and tons of tools. State of the art, next generation. This is what you want. If you want to enjoy fantasy NASCAR, if you really want to have that old feel of something new, invigorating, really getting into the data, really enjoying the racing, because there's a dashboard that I've created where you can watch the race live and get better than your regular DFS NASCAR experience, better than the DraftKings basic spread scoring. This is where you want to be. racefortheprize.com. This is the one you want. No more spreadsheets, no rely on some pick video, paywall pick videos, all that stuff. Saber Sims for $1 bazillion every single month. This is the new thing. Get in. Get in now.